Hey everybody, um, welcome to our webinar. And the format today is the coffee talk. This will be a very interactive discussion, and we're really excited to have a couple of super smart bankers with us. For anybody who doesn't know, my name is Dan Marks. I serve as the president of Infusion, and I'm joined by Tim Keith and Kelly Burnett and Chris King. So, Tim, you want to introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll go to Kelly and Chris.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Tim Keith. I'm a founder and CEO of Infusion, also ex-banker. Most notably, probably Dan and I worked together at First Tennessee, First Horizon, and have worked with hundreds of banks over the years on the type of stuff we'll talk about this morning. So great to be with all of you.
Awesome. Kelly?
All right. Well, good morning, Kelly Burdett. Dan, you said you've got some really smart bankers. I hope they join soon. At least Chris is here. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys. I have the privilege of working for Bank Independent. We are in North Alabama, and I work with our marketing team, our product and digital team, our payment team, and our deposit operations team.
Awesome. Chris?
So I'm Chris King. I also work for Bank Independent, and Kelly and I have had the pleasure of working together for almost 15 years now. And I get to lead our marketing team. So Kelly and I get to work together on a lot of fun stuff.
Awesome. All right. And so before we get into the full panel discussion, we're actually going to do a little poll, which will be fun for our audience. So we've got a number of guests on the phone today, and so you should see a poll pop up. There's one question, and it just helps everybody understand what everyone's trying to get out of the discussion this morning. So you should be seeing a poll on your screens. We're just asking you to provide a ranking of priorities. And so, don't stress about it too much. One is the highest priority, 5 is the lowest. If there's a tie, don't worry about, you can have multiple ones if there really are, if you have trouble deciding. But a lot of good engagement coming in as we're seeing this, and as soon as we get pretty good sample of participation, we'll end that, and then that'll also make sure that just as we have this interactive discussion, we're talking about the things that matter most to those of you who are joining us this morning for this coffee talk. So I feel like I don't know. I feel like we should have the talk show Jeopardy theme song running.
Yeah.
All right, but we got this is a really good participation, and so I'm going to share those results for us to look at. So this is probably not terribly surprising. By far, the number one priority on the phone, when you look at the number one and number two, is core checking or primary relationship growth. I mean, that's a bedrock of any banking institution. Looks like it's followed closely with perhaps a pro shop tie between cost of funds and balance growth. I mean, that's always the sort of the tension. And then new to bank and retention are in there as well. So awesome. Well, good news. I think the smart bankers that are on the phone will have some content to tackle those exact topics. So just as a reminder to just for everybody who has not used Zoom yet, if you've been living under a rock for the last 5 years, there is a chat box, and we'd love to have your questions. So just we manage so this is not the audio experience But if you have a question, we want to make it as interactive as we can. So, we'll guide the discussion, but if you have a question, chat that along. We'll monitor those comments and go for it. So just briefly, a little bit about Enfusion's perspective, if you're less familiar with us. We, as Tim mentioned, were founded almost 20 years ago in 2007. So that's a crucible of a time to build a company serving banks, very focused. But it's great that we're now in. We have clients in almost every state. We serve hundreds of banks and credit unions. And then one of the really cool stats is that the tracking that we do have generated over 23 billion in balances cumulatively. So the perspective is informed by a lot of practical experience and working with banks like Bank Independent and others. And it's really great to share insights back and forth and collaborate with bankers and have these kind of community engagements. And so as we get started on the discussion, maybe Kelly, start off. What has been your focus related to deposit growth? And we got the feedback from the panelists, but what's been your focus?
Yeah, thank you. I think we're definitely in line with the rest of the folks. From a bank perspective, we're a $2.8 billion bank, primarily focused in North Alabama. That's where all of our physical locations are, but we also have customers in 35 states. And so, how do we continue to build core relationships? That's actually a strategic initiative of ours. And then how do we change that deposit mix? We don't want too much of the high growth. We don't want too much of just any individual type. We want a good balance of all of those growths. And so, yeah, how do we go about doing that? And what are we doing? There's just a lot of tactics, but primarily, and the best thing is that being a privately held institution, we are able to have our board and our ownership really give us the priorities to say, this is who we are. We are a bank that wants to be a bank. We want to be the bank of choice in the communities that we serve. So how do we do that? And have that right strategic focus to go about that. Chris, I know you've got some other key thoughts around how you're doing that. So maybe you could share a little bit about some of that as well.
Yeah, we really wanted to focus on going after those core relationships, and the first part of that was defining that to our team members and thinking about, who are our customers that we have more opportunities with. Who are those customers who maybe have some products with us but don't have all their products with us? Looking at what are those sticky products that we can look to go after and cross-sell. Debit cards is one of those things that we really looked to and had a lot of success with. Kelly, as one of our product leaders and leading that function here at the bank with the product managers, we've invested a lot in that over the last, I guess, 10 years now, Kelly, since we've really switched to MasterCard. We've invested a lot in understanding what that portfolio needs and what our customers are doing with that. And things like our Roundup product, and really making sure that we're investing in things that customers are finding value in. So making sure that we're marketing those as well. That's one thing, but making sure that, we're not paying top of market prices. Our quality product, exceptional service, fair price philosophy means that we're not going to be top of market. So we've got to look for other ways to make sure that we're doing that. Another interesting thing that we've got to contend with is we've recently, I say recently, but within the last few years, we've moved into a new market in Huntsville, Alabama. So we've got our legacy market where we're very sensitive to repricing deposits. And we've got a new market where we've got our salespeople who need us to go out with some aggressive offers. So we've got to figure out how we go and be more aggressive in acquiring customers in a new market, and be sensitive to repricing in our legacy market. So we had some things tactically that we had to figure out how to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, good stuff. And then so talk a little bit about how did you identify, how did you sort of identify what are those opportunities to focus on given the strategic parameters from the ownership group?
So yeah, Chris mentioned we've got a legacy group, and then we've got a kind of a newer market. It's fun. We joke about that, saying that we go from very rural to rocket scientist. So when I say very rural, so the story that I usually like to tell is, if you've seen the movie Sweet Home Alabama with Reese Witherspoon and that group, there's a scene in there that talks about the Coondog Cemetery. Well, that's a real place, by the way. So the Coondog Cemetery is actually in our market. It's an amazing place. If you ever get a chance to come to North Alabama, go visit the Coondog Cemetery. That's as good Southern as I can sound there for you. But and we have dogs from South Africa, Russia, England, all of Australia, all over the world. So it's an amazing place. But that's in a very rural part of the state. So you go from the Coondog Cemetery to Huntsville, which is NASA. It's Blue Origins. It's these guys that are sending these rockets they're building the newest rockets that are going to take us back to the moon and to Mars. And so it's an amazing place that we have to contend with from a strategy perspective. So going back to your original question, Dan, how do we identify those customers? It's a little bit of everything. We are a commercial bank, so we have to be all things to all people almost. And so it's making sure that we strategically focus our messaging on where we are, what we do, how we do it, and who we are. So being in a newer market, as Chris mentioned, there's a lot of brand opportunity. We got to make sure they know who we are. We've been around for 77 years, but that market doesn't know us. And so we've got to make sure they know who we are and why we exist. And then once we get that trust in them, that they know who we are and we care about them in our communities, then we can start talking about those things. But as far as going after those things, we spend a lot of time digging into data. So FDIC reports, the census reports. We partner with a couple of other companies that really look at and help us understand the different segment markets within the market. So really breaking it down around our branch locations and understanding the segments that we have there, the generations that we have, who they are, what they are. And so that way we can really get targeted and drill in, whether it be we rarely do print media anymore. So most of our stuff is digital. And so that gives us the ability to really, really go highly targeted to those customers.
Yeah. And maybe Chris or Kelly, whoever wants to take this. So how did the Infusion opportunity assessment play into that planning process?
Yeah,
Chris.
Absolutely. When we started working with Infusion, doing that opportunity analysis, going through our customer base and looking at what products do they have, what opportunities do we have where they have services, products, balances out there at other organizations, and what are the actual opportunities to go after those balances? What is the real opportunity out there? The Infusion, all these guys are bankers. And so being able to take that and sit down at a table with our executive leadership and have a conversation about what are these real balance opportunities, what are the real impacts to our balance sheet, to our bottom line if we go after that effectively. It changed the type of conversation we were able to have about marketing from dollars spent to really an investment type conversation. It was much more detailed data and, much more of a, not a sure thing, but it helped us make the case better than almost any data that we had ever used before.
Oh, awesome. And so talk more about that, Chris. What was so actionable about the data, and how did it feed into your planning?
I think it gave you the confidence that that opportunity really exists in the market. And it gave you a plan to go after those balances. It really gave you an action plan, and sitting down with Infusion, brainstorming, here's the best way to go after this, here are the segments, here are the messages that will work for this. It's just a really really in-depth, really actionable, really fun process that gives you a lot of confidence that this is going to work.
Cool.
How many folks say data's fun? That's a good question. How many folks?
It's true that we believe
It
that.
is.
If that
Yeah.
makes us bank nerds, then so be it. But it is fun to have it pop. And so,
And
And
I
so-
think, so Dan, just to kind of take off on that just a little bit, we have a business intelligence team. So we have our own data warehouse inside of the organization. That was something that we identified about 10 years ago that we needed. So we've been working on this business intelligence platform and getting all of our data in there. And it's an incredible team that we have that does that. It's not just one person. And we have a whole team that is doing this today. And I think once we realized what Infusion brought to the table as well, it was such a complementary extension of our team, is that they can get us to a certain extent, but then you guys had that next level of information that really, when Chris was talking about it, made it easy for us to go talk to our executive team and our ownership team. It truly was that. It was this symbiotic relationship that really put it all together. So we got us to this point with our data and the information that we pulled into our warehouse, and then you guys were actually able to put it on the street and make it actionable and executed it for us at that point. So.
And as Kelly mentioned, we're a commercial bank with a consumer legacy, so there's a lot of pressure to be all things to all people. And I think the Infusion opportunity analysis helped us prioritize and say, these are your top opportunities. These are the things that are going to provide you the biggest bang for your buck. And these are the things that we think you can go after first. So that was a huge help for me in saying, this is the universe of things we can do. These are the things that we can go after first to make the biggest impact.
And so Tim, for maybe people who haven't been through an opportunity assessment before, maybe touch on just some of the analysis that these guys are finding so impactful. What's kind of the essence of the assessment and some of the key analysis?
Yeah, so a lot of it is what Chris talked about, which is trying to use benchmarking to assess depth of relationship, and where do I have relationships where I'm meeting one financial need, but they have other financial needs that I'm not meeting and someone else is meeting those needs. When it comes to deposit gathering, one of the most fundamental premises that the assessment is built on, and that should be kind of the radar in your head in thinking about gathering deposits, is also happens to be the single most consistent fact I've seen in 35 years of banking, which is the more they have with you, the more they have somewhere else. This shows up consistently, whether you're looking at more macro wallet share data or whether you're looking at campaign response data on a more micro basis. And just to give one, quick illustration, we had a client, a bank up in the New York area a couple of years ago, needed deposits, and called us up and said, "Hey, we've got this CD special, and we created a file of customers that we want to offer this product to. Can you execute a campaign and target the people on this file and then track the results for us?" And we said, "Yeah, we can do that for you, but can you tell us how you created the file?" And so what they had done is they had taken the net worth data and appended it to their customer data, and took any depositor, so they already have a deposit, but their net worth was at least 6 times higher than their deposit level. So what they're trying to do there is to say they've got all this money somewhere else, and I've only got a small percentage of it. And so what was interesting is we executed the campaign, we tracked the results. Households that had $50,000 or more in deposits with the bank pre-campaign made up 12% of the campaign, but accounted for 90% of the results. Households that had less than 10,000 with the bank pre-campaign, but theoretically had all this money somewhere else, made up 80% of the campaign, 1% of the results, almost a complete waste of money. So again, what it showed is the fact that I've already given you $50,000 is way more predictive of my likelihood to give you another 50 than the fact that I happen to have $500,000 somewhere else. So I always like to say, Bill Gates could put $1 billion in your bank. He's not going to do that, even though he has the capacity to do it, because he doesn't know who you are. He has no propensity to give you that money. And the only way you would be able to get Bill Gates to give you money is to pay him 10% or 25% or some crazy interest rate that he can't get anywhere else. And then he might actually look you up and decide to give you some money. And so that's kind of the premise behind the assessment is where do we have this intersection of capacity to grow, balances, relationships, and inclination or propensity to do that. And the central view of the data in the assessments, a deposit concentration table where you intersect macro concentration ratios. So we have 4% of households control 60% of deposits. Those are numbers you need to know because they're critical to the retention and the stability essentially of your funding base. But then intersecting with the concentration ratios, what are the strengths of those relationships? What's my penetration of checking in each deposit tier? What is my single versus multi-service usage? What percentage are also using credit products, which serve as an anchor on the deposit relationship? And so when you start to bring this data together, you have the ability to manage both relationships and portfolios in an integrated way versus having to try to choose between the two. And what happens there, to go to Chris's point about marketing being an investment, is when I can align, this is my highest retention priority. So these people are critical to my funding base and they represent my most efficient growth opportunity. And I can spend one marketing dollar to maximize retention and get efficient growth. That's the prioritization. That's a dollar you want to spend every day of the week. So the assessment helps you to quantify in specific segments what are those opportunities and what are those investments and what would be a reasonable expectation of return on those investments.
Awesome. And so Chris, I think you were talking about that, that quantification was hugely helpful in prioritizing. What are some of the things that you ended up prioritizing and executing against?
Yeah, so we started with 4 campaigns. We did a checking cross-sell campaign, so that's going to our customers that did not have a checking account. We did a debit card cross-sell campaign. We talked about the stickiness of that product and the success we'd seen with that. So that's customers who either did not have a card or had low usage. And then we did a CD cross-sell campaign. And then we did a checking acquisition campaign to prospects in that newer market. So those were the 4 that we prioritized.
Well, that's right in line with what some of the panelists said. Core checking growth and managing cost of funds. And debit, of course, is a hugely important element for obviously people think about it as a fee income, and that's true, but it's also really important in driving primacy and some low cost deposits.
Yes.
For relationships. And as you think about the tracking that's happened, any insights and learnings from the, kind of the fact that it's a journey and a program rather than sort of a random act of tactics?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the other key areas where Enfusion adds a ton of value is, we have quarterly calls where we're looking at the data and anytime we need additional insight, we can get on a call and look into that. But we've been very pleased with the results we've seen. From a marketing standpoint, I have to brag on one of the things we've seen is our debit campaign response has been last year was between 7.5% and 9% responder rate. So blown away with that. But I always tell my team, we can't just look at the marketing metrics. We have to look at the actual financial results. So we've driven significant deposit dollars at a really low cost per acquisition. And our executive team has been very pleased with those results. We've grown our deposits. 60% of our checking cross-sell deposits that we've brought in has been new money. 85% of the CD cross-sell campaign has been new money. And we believe that we've helped retain money that was at risk from that. We've deepened relationships. 68% of our checking cross-sell responders became multi-service households. 21% of CD cross-sell responders became multi-service households. So anytime we're turning CD customers into multi-service households, that's a great thing. And then internally, we're also tracking our deposit mix at the sales office level. That's been a focus for our retail team, changing that mix of CD versus savings versus checking accounts. And our goal is for each office to get to at least a 50% checking mix. So in January, we had 26% of our offices that were at least at that 50% level. And as of April, we've gotten up to 37% that are at that 50% level. So we're moving the needle at the individual office level, changing the mix of deposits. So we feel like we're on the right track.
Awesome. Yeah, and Chris, there was a question in the Q&A, and I don't know, but you would know probably, did we include an offer in the debit card campaign?
We did not have an offer in the debit card campaign. It was just about using the card, encouraging them to use their card. The only campaign that included an offer was that checking acquisition campaign.
Yep.
And it was a fairly small offer at that. It wasn't like we went out with some ridiculous cost of funds kind of thing to get us there, but it really was driven more around who we are and the services that we offer. Yeah, there was some enticement there.
And then another question we got was talk about the targeting and how does that fit in from a compliance perspective and relevancy perspective?
Yeah, that is a great question. And that is one of a concern that I had and our compliance team had going into this is, we got to make sure that this is compliant, that this fits with our obligations under the CRA Act and fair lending, all of those things. And that is the great thing about working with a company like Enfusion, that are bankers. It's not just a marketing company, it is a bank marketing company. These guys know what they're doing. They know how to target in a way that is compliant and that helps you reach your target customers and still make sure that you are reaching people who are diverse and include a representative market.
Awesome. All right, so Kim has raised her hand, which I didn't know you could do this in Zoom. Can you actually ask your question?
Dan, she asked it in the Q&A, or you could unmute her.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Kim, thanks for raising your hand. For some reason, we can't hear you, but if you chat your question, we'll ask it for you.
While she's doing that, I'll kind of go back to what Chris was talking about. You heard Chris talk about some of our specific branch level data. And so one of the things that we value from our Enfusion campaigns is that we get the data back. It's not just a report that you guys give to us. You also give us our data. And so, it's one of those trust but verify. We trust you guys, but we're also going to verify that. And so not only do we verify your data, but then we see that correlation into our other reporting that we're already doing. And we're seeing that move the needle across the board. So again, it's not that we don't trust you, but we have to trust and verify. And what we're seeing is that those numbers are really, really accurate as best we can be. And it's moving the other needles as well, which has given us credence. So when Chris says we're ready to do the next thing, or that we want to start considering the next opportunity with you guys, it makes that conversation that much easier as well. So
Yeah, and yeah, that's a part of banking, right?
Mhm.
Trust verifies great place at.
Yep.
Well, cool. We have maybe a couple more minutes for questions before we wrap up. Okay, let's see here. So what question was, what digital marketing did you use for the targeted campaigns?
Yeah, so the thing that I loved about these campaigns is that it was all digital. So in the past, some of the campaigns like this we've done some direct mail, we've done some other things, but with this, it was all email, it was all targeted digital through social, and then programmatic ads.
Cool. Well, fantastic. Any other kind of closing thoughts? Or
I would just say, working with Infusion has been a fantastic experience. I think they have helped us reach our target customers. Looking at our FDIC market share reports, we're making progress in that new market. And I would attribute a lot of that success to what we've seen with Infusion. We moved up from 15th place in that market to 12th place. So we're growing, and we captured 60% of the growth in that market last year. So the other thing that I would say is, working with Infusion on the performance marketing and growing core relationships also allows us to do some other cool things in brand awareness. One of those cool things is we're naming a stadium here in our local market. We just named the University of North Alabama Stadium Bank Independent Stadium. So having a partner like Infusion to focus on the performance marketing stuff allows my team to work on some other cool things in the market, because they don't have to worry about the performance marketing side of things. They know that Infusion has that handled and has our back on that. So it opens them up to do some more creative thinking and do some things outside the box that we also know that we can call Infusion to give us some thoughts on, because they've got these guys have some experience with those things too.
awesome.
And Chris, I think the other thing that we were talking about with that, you mentioned it gave us the opportunity. So we just finished up some brand surveys and call surveys and in-person focus groups. And because we're still in a newer market, we were able to quantify. And we think that the Infusion keeping us top of mind in the market, those campaigns that are always running out there, also led to some of those other growths for us. So it's not that it's just we're not just looking at our partnership with Infusion as a finite. It really helps us to grow the overall relationships and perception of the bank within these markets as well. So, which I thought was another good example of why this performance acquisition and cross-sell campaigns are so important to us.
Fantastic. We have one more question. Were all the accounts that we're promoting open online?
The majority of them, I believe 97%, the high 90% were.
Yep. And so based on that question, I'd say we still actually see a pretty big mix across the client base. Community banks are kind of all across the spectrum on ability to open, some or all accounts online. And so
Actually, wait, I think I've got that backwards, Dan. I think it was high 90s in the office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And so the checking accounts could be open online, but some of the larger CDs, for example, those kind of things. So I think that one of the key things is these omni-channel communications drive omni-channel response. So
Mhm.
people are not, you know, we don't, it's important to think about digital marketing as not just for digital account openings. It's reaching people where they are and then driving them, giving them the choice of which channel they want to open the account in. Well, as we close our time together, you know, we appreciate Kelly and Chris and for sharing insights. Tim and I really appreciate your time this morning and for sharing that kind of candid perspective. We do want to invite participants who are interested in doing the type of opportunity assessment that Kelly and Chris found so valuable. That's a process that we can do quickly, and for those participants on this call, we'd offer it complimentary. It does require gathering some data, but that's a great approach. And so we can follow up with you after the call, or if you want to reach Trevor Knott directly, his contact information is on the screen. And then we have one final poll. If you are able to stay with us, we'd love just to hear what was the most valuable part of this discussion. So as we're wrapping up today, if you have a chance to answer this poll question that should be on your screen, and tell us just what was most valuable to you, that would be very helpful as we continue to refine and improve how we're sharing information and insights. So thanks everybody for the time, and then we are going to distribute a recording of the session today for those folks who registered for the conversation. So thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.